YouTube, this is actually recording as a private session. It's not a public one that everyone can see. So just to let you know that it is private. And it's so I can send you out a replay at the end. Okay, so today we are talking about pensions on divorce. And it's not the most exciting of subjects, but actually it's a really important subject to talk about. And I'll talk you through a bit more about that as I go through my presentation. While you are here, I'd love to know where you're up to in your divorce process. Are you thinking about it? Are you about to start? Are you already in the process, or have you come to an end and there's still some things that you need to find out about? It'd be great to know so that I can make sure I can relate what I'm talking about to you specifically. So do let me know in the chat box where you're up to. Feel free to put it as a direct message to me if you don't want to share to everybody where you're up to in your divorce process. I've applied for divorce and my husband has now received the application, has 2 weeks to respond. Okay, so right at the beginning, but it's a good stage because you've taken that step. And I know taking that first step is so difficult. So thank you for sharing. And while you are sharing, let me explain to you how these sessions work if it's your first time here. So initially, I talk for about half an hour to 40 minutes, depending on the subject and how complicated it can be, because I really need to take you through a certain amount of information just to make sure that I've shared, as much as I can in that time. Once I have finished talking about the subject, so today it will be about divorce, then I will tell you a little bit about how my services work, so you're aware of that, and then take your questions as well. So while I'm talking, feel free to drop questions in the chat box to me, and I'll come to them at the end. But also feel free to interact with me. If there's something that resonates with you, if there's a question you've got about whatever I'm talking about, just drop it in the chat box so we can make it an interactive session. Because actually, if we are in this process of, giving knowledge and sharing, it can be quite helpful to hear from you as well, so that you can share with people what's helped you. Mediation, as we're still trying to agree on settlement. Okay, thank you for that. Thinking about it, cohabiting, not married. Okay. So the process is slightly different if you are not married. And feel free to, ask me questions around that as well. And I can come to why it's different. So I'm going to share my screen now and start talking about pensions. And do let me know if you can see this okay. I hope you can. Yeah, should be showing now. Okay, hope you can see that okay. And I'll keep the chat box open as well, so I can see what you are asking me and if there's any specific things from what you are saying that would be useful. And again, before I start, I should really talk to you about who I am, just so you know. Some of you may be here for your first session with me. And if it is, then welcome. And I'll tell you a little bit about who I am so that you can understand why I've got to the stage of presenting these talks. My name is Bhavna, and I trained to be a family lawyer right out of law school. That's exactly what I wanted to do. And I decided I wanted to be a lawyer at age 11. No idea where that came from, possibly LA law if it was around at that point, but I'd made my mind up about what I wanted to do. And it was a mission to make sure I achieved it. And family law came to me a little bit later, just because I really wanted to help people that were in a vulnerable place, and really show that empathy and compassion that I have for what people go through during this time. Fast forward a few years, I found myself getting married, and assuming that I would never go through the pitfalls that my clients did, because I understood what made a good marriage and I understood what went wrong. And quite clearly that isn't the case. Even though you have an understanding, it doesn't mean that you won't face divorce. And this was something that I faced, similar to some of you here. At this point, I had three very young children. I had taken a career break to bring up the family. So my ex-husband didn't really have the stress of everything at home, and he could concentrate on his career while I made sure the home and the family were looked after. When I found myself in the same position as you guys, I must say I was so scared because I didn't have any money. I had taken a step away from my career. The children were really young. And I remember staying up late at night, worrying about all of these things, worrying about how I was going to manage life, thinking about my future being taken away. Even though I made the decision to divorce, I really felt like somebody had taken away the dreams I had and the future that I'd planned for myself and my family as well. And so it did get me thinking that if I am so worried about how things are going to work out and I've got legal knowledge, how must it feel for all these people that don't have this knowledge yet have to face such a difficult time? And I did decide that I would, at some point when I had stabilized, I would start these sort of sessions weekly where I could give you some knowledge so that you're not left completely without help. And if nothing else, if you just get help through these sessions, I'm pleased that I'm able to put them on and pay it forward and be able to help out. But actually, through the work that I did, I realized that I didn't want to practice as a lawyer anymore. I wanted to bring something completely different to my clients, which was more supportive, more than just legal advice, and a fixed fee, which I think was really important. Because when I went through divorce proceedings, I have to say I didn't have very much funds, and I sold the family home and had to buy another property, and so funds were very limited for me. And I can imagine for a lot of people, funds are difficult. And I'll tell you a bit more about how I work at the end. So this was 12 and a half years ago, approximately, that I found myself in the same position. And obviously things are stable for me now. The children are grown up. I'm able to work full time. And I've now got two businesses that I run alongside each other. So things are hugely different for me. And I'm so glad to be able to have the space and freedom to bring sessions like this to you. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to move on to what we're talking about this week, which is pensions. And I'd love to know if how you guys feel about pensions. Do you know what type of pension you have? Are you aware of the value of your pension? Do you know what you're going to do with your pension on divorce already? Be great to know. And I know that pensions can be complicated, and that's why a lot of people actually ignore them. And especially women, there has been quite a lot of reports recently showing that women are losing out because they are not considering pensions during their divorce. There's also a very big gap on retirement where women don't have the funds really to manage their lifestyle, whereas men are, the majority of men are keeping their pensions and then are fine on retirement. So it's really important to understand your pension and the other person's pension when you're going through a divorce or separation. I'm not an expert on pensions, obviously. I deal with the legal aspects of divorce, but I can still give you some simple information around this subject. Lots of people ignore pensions when they're going through a divorce, and I mentioned a few reasons why that might be. So many of my clients will say they just want to leave pensions out of their settlements. And this is even before they know what their pension is worth and what the other person's pension is worth. So you're going in blind. I had a client who said and this was a guy that I was working with on a one-to-one basis. We don't really want to look at pensions. We're just going to ignore it. We've got the family home, and we've decided we're just going to split the family home, and that's it. And I asked him, "What do you think your pension's worth?" And he gave me a figure. And actually, when we got the actual figure, the cash equivalent value of his pension, it was worth far more than the family home. And then when we looked at his ex-wife's pension, again, her pension was worth far more than the family home. So they had a lot more assets than they thought. And actually, he thought his pension was bigger than hers, and it turned out hers was bigger. So by ignoring pensions, he would have left a lot more on the table that maybe he shouldn't have left there. So that was quite interesting to know that that was the case, and he learned a lot from that. So I'm just having a look at the chat box, and somebody's saying we amalgamated all of our previous work pensions into one about 3 years ago, but my part is still separate to my husband's. His part is much larger than mine. Okay, so that's a really interesting point, and something that I'm talking about, that most women are in this position where they don't have the bigger pension. Usually they have a smaller pension because they have taken time out of work to bring up the family, and that was the case for me as well. It's important to get a value on your pensions if you can. Firstly, because this value has to be presented to the court. So when you get to an agreement around your finances, you need to give a background of your finances to the court. And part of that is a value of your pensions. So the court needs to know what your pensions are valued at. So that's one reason to get a value. But the other reason is so that you can understand what pensions you both have. Because without that, how do you know what you've agreed is fair? How do you know that you will make ends meet on retirement? And also by knowing the value of your pension pot and the terms of your pension, sometimes we can create a solution, an agreement that takes into account a little bit about your pension. So for example, at 55, you might be able to take a percentage out as a lump sum and pay off your mortgage. And that might be quite a good thing to do. And we could add that into the cash flow planning that we do around your pensions. You also need to think about your short, medium, and long-term situation when we are looking at your finances. So we need to think about how your retirement will look, and also how other factors may affect the income that you've got. So if you've got children going to university, we do need to think about how you're going to fund that for them at certain stages in your life. And a pension might be one way you do that. There may be lots of other ways, but actually knowing the terms of your pension, the value of your pension, and the other person's pension can help us plan. So as much as pensions are really complicated, I wanted to go through some simple information for you, just so that you've got some knowledge about how pensions work. So let's first look at what a pension is. And some of you will already know how, what your pension is. But for those of you that don't have an understanding, it's a tax efficient way of saving money for your retirement. So it's basically you or someone else, for example, your employer, pay into a pot called a pension pot. And you receive tax relief on the pension contributions you make. And ideally, your pension pot grows over the years as you pay into it, as your employer pays into it, and hopefully the value of your investments in your pension pot will rise. They can obviously fall as well, but over a long period, usually they rise. And as I mentioned, you can take a percentage, 25%, as a tax-free lump sum from your pension at age 55, which can be quite a useful lump sum to receive. There's different types of pensions depending on your circumstances. And the first one I've mentioned here is a state pension, and most of you will be aware of this. A state pension is the standard pension the government pays you when you reach a certain age, the state pension age. And to be eligible for the UK state pension, you must have reached state pension age, firstly, and paid at least 10 years of national insurance contributions. To get the full state pension, you have to have paid a certain number of years of NI contributions over the years. You also get workplace pensions, and these are pensions that are arranged by your employer, and many of you will have these. Usually both you and your employer will contribute into your workplace pension. Sometimes you'll find that you've got 4 or 5 workplace pensions because you've changed employers, and so therefore you've got different pots with different employers. And as somebody said, they amalgamated their pots, so they put all their small pots into one big pot. And there can be a benefit of doing that, but obviously you need to take financial advice before you do that. There's 2 different types of workplace pension. The first is a defined contribution, where the pension pot is based on the amount you pay in, and depending on the performance of the pensions, the investments. There's a defined benefit, or often known as a final salary pension, where you get a set income based on your final salary and how long you've worked for your employer. Out of these 2, the defined benefit pension generally is worth more, even though you may have put in the same amount in a defined contribution. Often the benefit that you get in a defined benefit pension is so valuable. And that's why we've got to look at the terms of pensions. Because if, for example, your ex has a defined benefit pension, the value that you are given of his pension or her pension, you might find it's actually more valuable than that. So it's good to know what the terms are and what kind of pension you have and what kind of pension they have. Personal or private pension. So these are pensions that you have set up yourself, and you pay into it yourself. It includes SIPs, which are self-invested personal pensions. With a personal pension, you control how much you pay in and how often you invest into the pension. You can have a personal pension even if you've got a workplace pension. If you're self-employed, a personal pension can help you save for retirement if you don't have an employer as such. So that's different types of pension. A SIP is a personal pension where investment decisions are made by you. You're either managing your investments yourself, or you can get someone like a financial advisor to take care of your investments on your behalf. But it is something that is invested by you. You don't have a company and a pensions manager investing them for you. You make the decisions on the investments. So these are the different types of pensions that you might have. So once you understand the types of pensions you've got, how do you deal with them on divorce? And the first thing you need to know before you even look at them and what you're going to do with them is, what is the value of my pension? What is the value of the other person's pension? And the way that you value pensions is by contacting your pension company and getting a cash equivalent value from the pension provider. It's a summary that you will get from your pension. It's not the summary you get from your pension provider every year. Some people would say, but I've got a document that tells me what's in the pot. We're not looking at that summary that you get. What we're looking for is a very specific calculation the pension company can make that gives you an idea of what your pension is worth on divorce. So it's a cash equivalent value. And this is what the court wants to see when they look at the value of your pension. They will send this to you in writing with the full conditions around your pension. So when you contact your pension company and you ask them for the cash equivalent value, ask them to put it in writing. Sometimes they're able to tell you over the phone what your cash equivalent value is, but you do need it in writing, because what you will get as a pack is your cash equivalent value, but the terms of your pension, and also whether you can have a pension sharing order, whether you can have a pension attachment order. So we get to know that information from the pack. We also get to know any fees associated with these two types of orders. So it's important you get that pack, and then that will make you more informed, and then make your advisor more informed as well. What you do with both of your pensions depends on your circumstances and often what is important to you. And pensions are just one part of this jigsaw. Lots of people will split up their settlement based on the assets. So they'll say, we'll go 50-50 on the family home, we'll go 50-50 on the pensions, or you keep your pension and I'll keep mine. That's only fair because you paid into yours and I paid into mine. But what we actually have to do is look at your settlement as a whole. What do you have in your matrimonial pot? What assets are there as a whole? What's the family home worth? Do you have any other property? Do you have other investments, bank accounts, ISAs in your name, the other person's name, or in joint names? And including what pensions do you have, both of you? And that would go in the pot. So to get to a fair settlement, we have to look at your pension, your matrimonial pot, your financial pot as a whole, and look at pensions as one part of that pot, because the pensions give you an idea of what will happen long term, but it may not solve short term or medium term needs that you have. So we need to have a look at everything first and then decide what will happen. So a judge has the power to share out your income, your property, pensions, savings, and all of these things are called assets. And we have to share it out in a way that meets the needs of your children who are under 18, and they are priority. And then obviously you and your ex-partner. So when we look at your settlement, we use certain factors to work out how we meet your needs, how we meet the children's needs, and how we meet the other person's needs. And so we have to look at it as a whole picture. But pensions are very different to any other asset, because you can't sell your pension. You can't necessarily say, my pension's worth £100,000, I'll just liquidate it and get £100,000 in my pocket. You can't get cash out until you are at least 55. And at that point, you can only get 25% of your pot as a lump sum, tax-free. So they are really different. So we do have to use them differently, but we have to look at the overall picture of meeting your needs. So the overall aim is to get a fair outcome for you and your ex. But to get to this, it's not necessarily a 50-50 share. And how the court deals with your finances, how you reach an agreement on your finances, depends on your circumstances, such as your different needs, health, differences in age, differences in earnings, how long you've been married, who the children will live with. So there's different things that we have to take into account. And I just wanted to say this before I look at how you can split or look at pensions on divorce, because you need to understand that it's a whole process, not just pensions that we look at in isolation. But when it comes to pensions, there's three broad ways they can be dealt with on divorce. And I'll speak to you about each of these. And which of these work best for you depends on the type of pension, the value of your pension, what other assets and income you have, and also what your priority is as well. So coming to the first one, pension sharing, that's the most popular option, well, actually second most popular option for pensions when you're going through a divorce. So if you are married, and I know one of you has said that you're not married, but if you are married and you are going through a divorce and you have started divorce proceedings, you can then get an order to share your pension pot between you. So this is called a pension sharing order, and it can only be done on divorce proceedings. What actually happens in a pension sharing order is, say, for example, the lady that said that her husband's pension pot is bigger than hers. What would happen if you were doing a pension sharing order is some of your husband's pot would be moved into a pot of yours. So it is moved at the time of your divorce. So you own that pot straight away. So say, for example, it's decided that 30% of your husband's pot is moved into yours. It happens as part of the divorce proceedings. So you then own that pot. That pension share has come to you and it's in your pension already. And so you then own it. Excuse me. So it's not that you get a percentage of the person's income. It's not something that happens in 10 years' time when the person retires. As soon as you have got your financial order agreed and stamped by the court, you can go ahead and get that pension share, the money moved from his pot into your pot. A pension share is always a percentage as well, because pensions change every single day. So what's in your pot will change every day. What's in the other person's pot changes every day. So we have to term it as a percentage. So 30%, 40%, 50%, whatever it is, it would be transferred. So an example of this would be if your ex had a pension of 200,000 and there is an order that 50% of this needs to be transferred into your name, then the pension company will transfer 100,000 into your pension pot. So that's how it works. It doesn't necessarily mean a pension sharing order doesn't mean that you are sharing the pension equally. What you are doing is sharing a percentage. That could be 50%, but sometimes it isn't. The aim of this order is to give you the same income on retirement. And sometimes this means that it might be necessary for a smaller percentage than 50% to be moved across. Most private pensions and workplace pensions can be shared. Some can't be. So it's definitely worth looking at the conditions of, say, the other person's pension to find out if they can do a pension share based on that pension. And if you're the one with the bigger pension, can you do a pension share based on the terms of your pension? There's lots of benefits of pension sharing, and the courts really like it, I have to say. The reason why it's a good option is that when the pension share happens, you own that pension pot. You own that pot of money. It's not affected by your ex dying, you remarrying in the future, anything like that. You get to choose where you put that money, which pot you put it in. It does have to go in a pension pot, not in your bank account. And later on, you can decide what you're doing with your pension pot as well. There's some disadvantages of pension sharing. It can be expensive. The first point is you might need to get a report to work out what percentage of the other person's pension has to be shared to make your retirement income similar. And that can cost about £2,000. The pension company may charge you to do a pension share. They may even say you need a financial advisor involved. So these are all costs that could happen. It depends on the terms of your pension. So have a look at the cash equivalent value plus all the different terms that are written in the pack you receive as to what the terms are of your pension. You need to think about the cost over the benefit. So if it costs you £2,000 to take approximately £10,000 worth of pension funds, then you might think again and think it's not worth spending £2,000 just to get £10,000. What I'll do is take something else instead. So you have to be sensible, bearing in mind the charges that might happen. So pension sharing is what courts often order where there is a reasonable sized pension pot. So it is quite a popular option. And there has been lots of reports saying pension sharing is the fairest way of sharing pensions in a matrimonial setting. The next one is offsetting, and lots of people prefer offsetting. But there's been reports to say a pension share is more fair than even offsetting. So think about that when you are deciding what to do. So what is offsetting? Offsetting is when you decide to take another asset today rather than get a pension benefit in the future. So you might decide that your ex keeps all of their pension fund, and as a trade-off, you get the family home, for example, because your priority may be staying in the family home. You might have young children, maybe you could be working part-time, or your income's not at the right level yet. And you might decide that actually keeping the family home is priority to you, and you're not worried about a pension share. And obviously you need to be careful, because we need to plan for retirement. What are you going to do in retirement? If you've got a really small pension pot yourself, lots of people will say to me that what I'll do is I'll take in a lodger or two, because the children will have moved out. I'll sell the property and downsize. I'll rent out the property and rent elsewhere. So that's different things that people do to fund a retirement pot later on, if you don't have a very big pot now. Lots of couples choose offsetting because sometimes it's the only option available. It might be that there just isn't much else besides the family pot and a little bit of pension. So it might be that the main carer of young children of the family wants to keep living in the family home, and there's no other assets instead of like only the pension pot. So they keep the family home and the other person keeps their pension pot. It's not always as straightforward as this. So you do need to get some help around this, because offsetting can be unfair. The problem with it is that the value of the pension fund is really hard to compare with the value of a property. It's like comparing oranges and apples. They are both fruit, yes, but they're very different. They taste very different. And so it's not as straightforward as I'll keep the family home, you keep the pension. So working out whether this is fair at all is tricky. Often people will say, I don't care if it's fair, it suits my needs, it's what I want to do. And so that's often why people take offsetting. You need to think about what will happen to you on retirement if you are offsetting against the family home. So just make sure you've got a plan for that. But also, if your ex has a pension that has a really good benefit, so say a final salary pension, then sometimes that's more valuable than the family home even. And so you need to think about these things carefully. So if you did agree offsetting, you don't necessarily need to do any extra paperwork like you need to do with a pension share. Your financial agreement, which is in the form of a consent order, can state that you're keeping the family home, the other person is keeping their pension, and you won't make a claim on their pension or on their estate in the future. So whatever happens, you can't then claim on it in the future. And you will need to think about building up a pension pot or other assets that bring you income so that you are fine on retirement. Finally, pension attachment. And this is the least popular way of dealing with pensions. So this is quite an old way as well. And what happens with a pension attachment order is that a percentage of the pension income that you get on retirement is paid to your ex, or a percentage of theirs is paid to you, whoever's got the larger pension pot. A percentage of any tax-free lump sum you receive from your pension pot can be paid to your ex, or the other way around. So this is where you are actually sharing the income, not sharing the pot now. There are disadvantages of pension attachment orders, and that's why courts don't order them very much anymore. And it's because the person receiving the benefit, so if you're the person that is waiting to get your ex-husband or wife's pension income, you have to wait till they have decided to retire. And sometimes people refuse to retire because they don't want you to get any part of their pension pot. So they may retire at 87 and you're still waiting for their retirement. If you are the person receiving the pension payments from your ex's pension, you lose this if your ex dies or if you remarry. And so because of these issues, a pension attachment order is very rarely made these days. And most people will opt for pension sharing or offsetting. So what are your next steps? I've given you some information about pensions. What do you do now? The first thing is get the value of your pensions from your pension provider. Really important you do that you get the cash equivalent value. If you or your ex have a defined benefit scheme, find out what those benefits are, because those benefits will be really important and the value of the pension could be much higher. So usually what happens once you've got your valuations of your pensions and everything else, that all the other assets, you swap this information with your ex, and then you work out the best way of dealing with all your assets as well as your pensions. Hopefully you come to an agreement and then you follow through with that agreement that you've come to. And I know that dealing with pensions is really complicated, and I hope that some of this information has clarified a bit for you. You need to talk through what you're going to do with your pensions very carefully, because it's really important you get a fair settlement. It's really important to do that. So hopefully that gives you some information. So that's the end of the presentation around pensions. I hope that's been useful. I'm going to spend just a little bit of time telling you about the services that I have. And the primary one is my Divorce Right program. It's a 6-month set fee and set time frame program. And by program, I mean a space where you get support and guidance. It's fixed for 6 months, but you can go on longer if you need to. It's just within 6 months, some people are able to finish everything. And so I would rather keep it for 6 months. And then if you're not able to finish, you can still stay on. But actually, although we talk about the legal aspects sometimes of divorce, when you're going through this, and some of you will already know if you're going through it now, that it's not just a legal process. What you're going through has so many different knock-on effects. It's the realization that your marriage has ended, the fears that you will have, the financial empowerment that you need. There's obviously practical decisions to be made, financial decisions to be made that can affect your future. And you have to manage all this alongside your roller coaster of emotions as well that will come. And there's so many questions that you have. And at least when it is a fixed term contract with me for this program, you know that what you're getting is a space where you can ask as many questions as you want. And obviously, I want you to feel financially empowered, confident, resilient, and have that strong vision for your future self going forward. So that's a bit about the program. And hopefully the next slide comes along. There you go. It's 6 months of support and guidance with a fixed fee. I help you with correspondence and documents. We're filling in forms. We do your divorce application if you need to. We are looking at financial proposals in a lot of detail. We're looking at settlement options in a lot of detail. I bring a supportive community and other experts, so a financial advisor, mindset coach, and we had a parenting expert come in recently as well. So different experts to come and talk to you so you've got support of a team. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how it works. Because actually, whilst I'm not your solicitor during this program, you don't actually need a solicitor to help you through this process. Lots of people believe they need one, they have to have one, but that isn't the case. A lot of people now are doing it themselves because the costs are so high. The average cost is 18,000 in the UK per person, but actually what you can find is that it can be a lot more than that. So 25,000 pounds worth of legal costs can be incurred. So we just need to be a bit careful about that. So that's a bit about the program. And before I carry on, I just wanted to give you information about a client that did go on to do a pension share. So this is Diana. She's got one adult child, one dependent child. Her earnings are a lot less than her husband's. And she has told me that her priority is to keep the family home. She knows that she won't be able to get a mortgage on another home. So she's really worried about that. And so she wants to make sure that she can keep the family home, stabilize her children, And she'll think about other things if she gets to a point. So if, say, for example, she on retirement, her pension pot isn't very big, she will look at downsizing. She may rent out her family home. She may take on a lodger so that she can afford her bills. Her husband made the finances really complicated. He was earning a fair amount of money. There was bonuses and all sorts of different benefits coming in, and she wasn't getting clarity on that. We worked through a certain amount of the disclosure, and we got to a point we couldn't get any more without court proceedings, and she really didn't want to go to that point. So she knew her pension was much less than her husband's, and she did get a pension report done, which actually told us how much of her husband's pension should be moved across to her. So bearing that in mind, she kept the family home. She got a lump sum to pay off some of her mortgage and a pension share, so that became a fair settlement. And it actually met all her needs because her pension went up a little bit. She kept the family home, but yet her mortgage wasn't as high as it could have been. So she felt quite happy with that settlement. And this is what she said. During the program, you have live support calls, and she got clarity on the questions she had and the things that she was worrying about. Oh, and I give you a structure about most things. She was going to be discussing finances with her husband face to face, and we had talked through this in a lot of detail. So she knew what to say. She knew what her proposal was, why it was a good proposal. We talked through the different things that he might come up with and how she was going to argue those points or deflect those points. I asked her to keep calm and collective, to not talk about the past. And she did get to an agreement in that meeting that she had. And she encourages the other ladies to think about asking a lot of questions to get knowledge, get clarity, so that you can make the best decisions. And she was working with me in the program. Cost of the program is £2,500. And obviously this is much lower than a solicitor would charge you. It's for 6 months, as I mentioned, and you can decide to make the most out of it by asking questions, by showing up, by being at the support calls, and making sure that you are making the best of that time with me. And this is payable in one installment of 5 installments. So if you would like to know a bit more about the program, I can offer you a call where we discuss the program and whether it would be the right thing for you. So do let me know if that would be useful, and we can definitely set that up. And my assistant Yufi will be putting, hopefully, there it is, information in the chat box about how to book that call and other things as well, like my divorce planner, which actually helps you take action. It's not just a book to read. There's lots of blank spaces and downloadable resources so that you can do some of this work yourself, which is really important. So you can get that from Amazon, and I think the link to buy is in, yes it is, in Yufi's comment there. Obviously connect with me on different channels and follow my free resources as well. I offer quite a lot of free resources on Instagram, on Facebook, and there are some free resources on my website as well. So I'm going to stop there and have a look at your questions. Let me just stop this, and I'm going to stop the recording as well.